It's human nature to align your beliefs with whatever the mob mentality happens to be. In other words, people's opinions are fairly easily influenced by their peers' behavior and thoughts. People just want to fit in, and as a result, statements that really are opinions are often presented as facts, even if the actual data supports the opposite hypothesis. The many discussions surrounding the NFL are a perfect example of this phenomenon. Historically, there have always been a couple of lightning rods around the league. No matter what these guys do, they always have the talking head spinning it against them. Baker Mayfield is a perfect example of that right now. While in his case, much of the negative attention was self-inflicted, there is no arguing that he has fallen victim to the mob mentality and people are ready to pile on. And that's why after every subpar performance, you see every sports channel waxing poetic about how Baker is a me-first guy and how overrated he was coming into the season, when in actuality there are a litany of other factors that play into the Browns' struggles. For once, however, we're not here to talk about Baker. Rather, we're here to talk about the guy who perhaps takes the most unwarranted heat in the entire NFL at this point, Kirk Cousins. One opinion, however, is steadily becoming closer and closer to an undeniable fact. Kirk Cousins is actually good at playing quarterback. And while this may be an unpopular opinion, the facts bear it out. So before you rage quit, take a look at what Kirk has accomplished as a fourth-round draft pick out of Michigan State. On any given Monday morning, you can turn on the TV or radio and hear someone trashing Cousins.
All I'm saying is, bottom line is, Kirk Cousins got got.
Look, I agree that Kirk Cousins is the problem.
The Vikings can win, lose, or draw, but it really doesn't matter. He's the anti-Tom Brady, meaning that he either gets all of the blame or none of the credit, when in actuality the truth probably falls somewhere in the middle. What's weird about all of the Kirk hate is that this kind of scrutiny is usually reserved for the outspoken high draft picks who the fans and media take it upon themselves to humble. It's often the thoroughbreds that get it, not the fourth rounders. The sad part is he was at one point a fan favorite around the league, at least to a degree, in spite of the fact that many fans were scratching their heads when the Washington Redskins drafted him back in 2012, the same draft they traded up to select Robert Griffin III in. Mike Shanahan, the Redskins head coach at the time, explained it like this: "You're one or two plays away from being the starter, and if I see that value out there on the third day of the draft, I'm going to take that." Perhaps Shanahan knew something about RG3's now infamous fragility ahead of the draft when he said this. In the time since, Cousins vindicated the Redskins draft scouts 10 times over by excelling when he filled in for the oft-injured RG3. Yet for some reason, people love to trash Cousins at every turn. It all started with his time back in Washington. For 3 years, the Skins toggled between RG3 and Cousins, holding out hope that Griffin, who was electric his rookie season, could recapture the magic. But RG3 never found his way back to being the player he was, and ahead of the 2015 NFL season, Cousins was named the Redskins starting quarterback. During the first leg of that season, Cousins led the Redskins to a couple of gripping fourth-quarter comebacks and started to really take the city by storm. He'd continue to have multiple 4-touchdown games, including one game against the Saints, when he became the first Redskins QB to post a perfect passer rating of 158.3. Cousins and Washington would ultimately qualify for the postseason, a huge step for Cousins and for the franchise in the post-RG3 era. And while this should have been an exclusively positive turning point in Cousins' career, as he was heading into free agency for the first time, however, it ended up resulting in a seismic shift of the public perception of Kirk. This was not Kirk's fault, though. Much of the blame should be put on Washington, who used its non-exclusive franchise tag on him rather than negotiating a long-term extension. Perhaps they were still holding out some form of hope that RG3 would return to form, or maybe they just weren't sold on Cousins and felt it was best to give him a prove-it type of deal. But either way, this contract has undeniably started the domino effect that has resulted in much of the unfair Cousins hate. How did Washington using this designation on Kirk Cousins damn him to a career in a fishbowl of hypercriticism and scrutiny, you might ask? Well, in short, because he did, in fact, prove it. During that 2016 season, Kirk went out and had another great year. He completed 67% of his throws, threw for nearly 5,000 yards, and tossed 25 touchdowns en route to a Pro Bowl selection. And on top of that, he narrowly missed clinching another playoff berth for the Redskins, who at that point had made the postseason just 3 times since 2000. As a result of his stellar performance, his price tag only went up as he headed back into free agency. Cousins' representatives tried to negotiate a long-term extension with Washington, but once again the Redskins brass decided to yet again use their franchise tag on him. To put this bizarre decision in perspective, this marked the first time in NFL history that a quarterback was franchise tagged in consecutive years. In 2017, Cousins continued to put up strong statistics, but the team's middling roster resulted in another tough football season, and the team finished 7-9. So despite throwing for 4,000 yards and 25-plus touchdowns in 3 consecutive seasons since becoming the starter, Cousins was a free agent again heading into the 2018 season. This helped to cultivate the narrative that Kirk Cousins just didn't have it, whatever it is. Now, to be fair to Kirk Cousins haters, it wasn't just Washington's unwillingness to commit to the QB long-term that started this movement. He did have some shockingly bad performances in prime time, and a lot of his counting numbers came against subpar competition. Analysts love to point to the latter in particular, citing his record against teams that had records below 500. And again, to be fair, they do have a point. But if you ask me, Cousins' struggles against the NFL's elite teams and Washington's organizational dysfunction are inextricable. I mean, just look at what the Redskins have done since Cousins left for Minnesota. Anyway, as I mentioned, the signal caller signed with the Minnesota Vikings, who were fresh off of a 13-3 2017 campaign that ended with a 38-7 rout in the NFC Championship game. A loss that was attributed to the relatively low ceiling that then-starter Case Keenum gave the team. This pushed Minnesota, who had already inked a number of its star talents to extensions, to sign Cousins to a 3-year, $84 million deal, fully guaranteed. This decision drew ire from many folks around the league and in the media. They all questioned if Cousins was really that much of an improvement over his predecessor. And while there was a tinge of reality in the comparison, the truth is that Case Keenum never came close to accomplishing what Kirk Cousins has at the NFL level. By all accounts, Case Keenum is a great locker room guy and a very serviceable NFL quarterback. But in reality, he is a Tier 1 backup. He is good enough to come in and spell an injured starter for a couple of weeks to keep the team afloat so they don't have to punt on the season, but that's about it. So it's mind-boggling that people wanted to pretend that he and Kirk Cousins were the oft-used Spider-Man meme, pointing at one another as if to suggest they are the same person. Now, some of the outrage probably stemmed from fans wondering how much their franchise quarterback was going to get paid next, and how that could impact their team's respective ability to put talent around the quarterback. But again, that has nothing to do with Kirk. Nevertheless, the floodgates had truly burst open on Kirk Cousins' hate. And to be fair to his detractors, his first season in Minnesota didn't really do him any favors. Despite putting up yet another strong statistical season in which he completed over 70% of his passes for 4,298 yards and 30 touchdowns with just 10 interceptions, Cousins and the Vikings had an extremely disappointing year. The Vikings finished 8-7-1 and narrowly missed out on a postseason berth. For most teams, this would be a relatively successful year, but not for a team as talented as the Vikings, who just signed a quarterback to the first fully guaranteed deal in NFL history. And to add insult to injury, the team they lost out on the wild card spot to was the Philadelphia Eagles, the same team that kicked their teeth in during the NFC Championship game the previous year. Following this debacle of a season, both the quarterback and the team were mocked relentlessly, and the narrative that Cousins was simply not good enough to take a team to the promised land took off. For the first time in his career, Cousins started to deserve some of the criticisms he was facing. Like I said, the team was 13-3 the year before and was loaded with talent. His receiving core had the likes of Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, with a solid tight end in Kyle Rudolph. Stud running back Dalvin Cook was coming back from an ACL tear he suffered early in the 2017 season to complement Latavius Murray. The defense that carried the team the year before was returning a ton of guys and brought in Sheldon Richardson as a big-time acquisition in the offseason. Quite literally, all signs pointed towards a hugely successful year up north for the Vikings and Cousins, but the results just weren't there. And boy, oh boy, did Cousins hear it. From the fans, from the media, from everyone. Just because he signed a big deal, one he earned, this modest fourth-round draft pick somehow jumped the shark and became everyone's favorite player to bash. Like I said, he did deserve some of the scrutiny, but let's not let one season of underachieving discredit a very successful start to a career. I mean, the guy went from a fourth-round pick to a Pro Bowler, and he signed to the richest contract in NFL history at the time. It couldn't all have been overhyped. During his time as a starter, he had already led 12 game-winning drives in just over 4 seasons. That's almost 15% of the games he has started. That's insane. Precision has been key in his success. His completion percentage has never dipped below 64%, and it has been at least 67% in 3 of those 4 seasons. Not only has he been accurate, but for the most part, he has taken care of the ball, never eclipsing more than 13 interceptions in a season. And it isn't like he's just dinking and dunking all over the field. He's consistently been one of the best deep ball passers in the league. The stats once again back that up, as he is leading the league in yards gained per attempt with 9.1. Not only that, but we have seen him connect with Thielen and Diggs, both on some bombs down the field in recent weeks. So maybe let's hold the horses on all the Kirk Cousins' trash talk, and let's see how this season plays out. Maybe this will be the year that he proves all the haters wrong. Only time will tell. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to click the subscribe button down below. If you like the video, then like the video. We'd really appreciate it. And last but not least, don't forget to tune into TPS every single day for more cool videos.